Your hair's looking very lovely today, very magenta.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so I do have a plan, and I'm going to just start in on the plan, and then we'll get started. You ready?
Yes, absolutely.
Go.
It's the Inspiration Place podcast with artist Miriam Schulman. Welcome to the Inspiration Place podcast, an art world insider podcast for artists by an artist, where each week we go behind the scenes to uncover the perspiration and inspiration behind the art. And now, your host, Miriam Schulman.
Hey there, my friend. This is Miriam Schulman, your curator of inspiration, and you're listening to episode number 323 of the Inspiration Place podcast. With me today, we have a Hollywood insider who has an Emmy and multiple Oscar nominations. Now she's a business strategist and a mastermind coach who knows business can be ridiculously fun as well as highly effective. Please welcome to the Inspiration Place, Liz Scully. Well, hey there, Liz. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Okay, so Liz and I are related, right? You agree with that, right? Not really. We are related through Candace.
Yes, we are, I think, coaches in law. When you have the same coach, surely that makes a relationship between the people who are being coached. Yeah,
I think
obviously.
that makes us like cousins or sisters or something like that.
At the very least, actually, if not twins, to be fair.
Could be. Yes. I'm going to go with sisters, though. Yeah. Very good.
Fair.
Okay. So Liz is writing a book on, tell me the name of your forthcoming book.
It's called Think Like a Film Crew, and it's about the stuff I learned in film that is useful for entrepreneurs.
Okay. But today we're focusing mostly on Mastermind. But does your work in the film industry, did that lead you to the Mastermind? Or can you share a little bit about that journey?
Yes, absolutely. So I've spent 20 years working in film in post-production, which is after they have done filming with live action, they then put all the visual effects and all the exciting stuff in. And I worked in that area doing lighting. And basically what they do is they take a lot of very skilled people, pay them far too much money and tell them they're all right. At all points, everything you do, everyone is convinced they are correct. So you are dealing with this massive number of egos all the time. They kind of open a door to a studio, throw you in and go, we're not letting you out till you've won an award. And that feeling of having to work with complicated groups in very complicated ways meant that I grew to love collaboration, and that feeling of any group, if it has the right people in it, can work. And even people that have totally different views to yours can give you massive insight. And that was a very short step from there to the sort of masterminds I run now, where people who need to have a bigger view of their business and their art and their work, having other people give that 360 is really helpful.
Yeah. So I run a group, a small cohort, and then I have a large group coaching program that I have accountability pods inside, and I give them some structure, but I don't run those pods. What I'm most interested in talking to you about is really getting coaching for myself on how to manage all these things. Yes, of course. Just so we're all transparent about what's happening here. Like, okay, you can also use these things yourself. But I thought it would be really interesting, Liz, if we just cut straight down to what makes a bad mastermind. Like, what are the things to avoid? And then I'll see if I'm doing any of them.
Okay. Well, there are many examples of bad masterminds. I would say most masterminds are not very good. So a mastermind group, in essence, is a very small group of people, in my opinion. Small, intimate masterminds is the way to go. So a little pod. And they meet regularly and they make a plan this time that they will achieve next time. Very simple. So a bad mastermind, where do we start? They don't have goals.
Let me just ask a quick question, though. So what is, in your opinion, well, this is all in your opinion, so we're not going to say that again. What is the ideal size for a mastermind group?
So I think you can have bigger masterminds, but they have to be broken down into groups of somewhere between 4, 6, or 8, something like that. If you have more than that, in person, you can probably meet maybe 20 at a push in person, but 12 is good. But online, and I'm assuming your groups are online, then we need a bit more leeway, because as we all learned during the pandemic, we can have meaningful connection on Zoom, but it just takes a bit more organizing and a little more time to get right. So my groups are 4 people. When I'm training people, I suggest they go for 4 or 6. I have run them with 8. But as the person running them, it's quite stressful, because just at the point where someone gets to an amazing breakthrough, you have to, right, and moving on, now let's hear from Dave, which is not what anyone really wants to do.
Yeah. So just for my listeners who are not in my incubator program, the pods that we have now, we have it set for 5 people. And then occasionally we will make room for a 6th person. And usually it's because somebody in that core group of 5 has like they can only come twice a month or something like that. So really we know that in general there are about 5 people who are committed, and we don't want it to be more because we don't want them procrastinating.
Yes, exactly.
Like if each person has 10 minutes, well, that adds up very quickly if you want it to stay within an hour. Okay, so great. I feel like, yay, I got that one right, the number. What was the next thing you were about to say as being like the big mistake or the big
mistake
not
is
goals, right? Is that where I cut you off?
Well, not having goals is pretty vital. If you haven't got goals, you kind of haven't got a mastermind, to be fair. It is one of those things that's baked in. So do your people create a list that they achieve next time?
Well, with the group that I run, the cohort that I run, I make everybody commit to what they're going to do for next week. And when we start the cohort, so I call it the inner circle, and it's kind of like my mastermind level of the Artist Incubator. Currently, there's 7 people in it. It is hard when it's fuller than that, but I have allowed it to go for more than that many people. But then I'll let it go for 2 hours. It's not just an hour-long meeting. And at the very beginning of the cohort, we say what our income goals are, what are we striving to? But at the end of every meeting, we say, what are you committed to doing before next time? Now, is that different than what you had in mind, like in terms of a goal?
No, that's perfect.
Okay.
Because there is something about having committed, having said it out loud to the group, that means you'll achieve it. And partly it's that whole, you've got your subconscious involved, there's that side of it, goal setting. But also there's something of that feeling of a Sunday night doing your homework before school, because nobody wants to be the person who turned up when, all those things I said, I haven't done any of them. So we want to not let the group down. And that little bit of, let's be honest, shame, if you do, means that things get done.
So one thing I've been doing with my accountability pods, because now we have a lot of them in the big program. I forget how many. There's definitely more than a dozen. But we have competitions between them. And that kind of helps with exactly what you were saying. So last month, our competition was they all had to have a welcome sequence and they were competing. And if one person in their pod didn't have a welcome sequence running, they were eliminated. And some people felt really bad about that. But that was like part of the whole point of the pod is, like you said, the shame. Like it's kind of important.
Exactly. I think the power of shame can be very positive. As long as it's only, you don't want to let people down, as opposed to you're lying awake at 3 a.m. feeling a failure. That's not helpful.
Right. Well, it's not like people were going to get punished for it's just they didn't get to win. There could only be one winner anyway. So it's not like there would have been 3 winners and now we can't win because of Joe over here. It's just that like, okay, Joe didn't do his job, so nobody wins. So next time, Joe, do your job. Then you won't let your teammates down.
Exactly. That's perfect, because that little bit of pressure is what we often need to make sure a task gets on our to-do list in our busy weeks.
Yes. And right now I'm like wishing I had that whole clock situation set up that you told me about. I did order the clock. I did. And it turns out it needs like double or AAA batteries, which I don't have. But of course I waited till today to set it up. So that's why it's not set. When we come back, Liz will be sharing the biggest mistakes people make when setting up a mastermind. But first, I wanted to share some more wins happening inside the Artist Incubator Inner Circle. Remember Lynn Samus, who was on the show just a few months ago? Well, she keeps having success. So tell me your wins first.
I was just writing them down. I got a check in the mail today, and then I sold a painting this morning. So I'm at 14.3 for this month so far.
So which month did you have the $15,000 month?
That was it April or May? It was April, I think.
April. Okay. And then May, you sold 10.
And then June and July were kind of slow. I mean, I was doing a couple thousand.
Okay.
And I just couldn't believe it because I'd got 2 big checks from past commissions and they hadn't paid me. So those showed up in these past 2 weeks. And then I sold a painting this morning for $3,600 and a couple thousand more. So I thought, what is this added up to already? So it's 14.3. I think it's because I haven't even had my open studio, which comes at the end of the month.
It's only August 13th also. Like, do you think you can get to 20?
Well, I'm going to go for 20.
Being an artist isn't easy, and digging deep for the courage to keep putting yourself out there. Well, having a coach and a mastermind have been a huge ingredient for Lynn's success and many others. If you recall, she was only making $35,000 for all of last year, all of 2023. And so far this year in 2024, as of August, she has more than doubled her income from the prior year, and she still has a few months to go. So if you want success like this, the next cohort of Inner Circle begins in October. There's a lot of people who have already signed up to continue, and Lynn happens to be one of them. So if you want to be in there with Lynn and Chris and Kelly and Amy and Tammy, I'd love to have you in there too. So to see if you qualify, go to schulmanart.com/biz. That's the word biz, as in B as in boy, I as in ice cream, Z as in Z. And you should know this is not a sales call. This is an opportunity for us to make sure that this program is the right fit for you. I will make sure that you feel comfortable saying yes or no and not land of maybe. So again, that's schulmanart.com/biz, B as in boy, I as in ice cream, Z as in Z. And now back to the show. So is there any other glaring mistakes of things you found inside of mastermind groups? Because I know of one as a participant myself, but I want to see if you're going to say it.
Assuming you've actually built a mastermind, so you've got a small group and you've got goals and people have a place where they can ask questions. That is a mastermind.
Okay.
But so obviously you've got those. Where I see the biggest flaw, the place where almost every mastermind lets itself down, is on curation. Now, by the very nature of people joining your program, they are already curated to a certain degree by being in there. They are like-minded enough to be following you, sensible enough to have joined your program, and ready to take action. So that already eliminates a lot of people. Where things go wrong is if people are setting up their own mastermind, which you can do very successfully, but if they just look at their friends and think, who's available on a Tuesday, as opposed to who would be a good member of this group, who is going to be helpful. So bad curation is probably the biggest flaw. I think we've all been in those groups where there's one person that you're thinking, could you please let other people have a go at the talking stick? Stop speaking.
Yeah, that was the thing I was thinking about. And it was like whoever's running it, like not reining in that one person. So when I've run it myself, in the beginning, I used to just say, okay, so it's 142, and I'd write down 142 on my piece of paper. And then at 152, I would wrap it up. So now I use a tool on Zoom, the timer tool. Have you found it? Yeah. So I run the timer for everybody so that it plays an obnoxious sound when the time is up. And it doesn't mean they get cut off then, but it really then just helps so that somebody's time doesn't spill into 15 minutes and Susie over there is feeling resentful because she only got whatever 8 minutes according to her or whatever it was. Now everyone feels like they got the same amount of time. But in terms of curation, how are you doing that currently with your groups, Liz?
So there are quite a few things to consider because you want to have a different mix of personalities. I have before now run groups where everyone's an introvert or everyone's an extrovert. And with the introverts, it's very hard to get them to speak at all because nobody wants to go either first or second, or indeed third. Everyone's trying to be fourth or fifth, which there's the sort of shuffling to the back, which is hard to do on Zoom. I could see you all. So there's that difficulty. And with extroverts, you have to be super on top of, as you say, people not hogging the mic.
Yeah.
And that makes it harder for other people to add their little extra information, because that's where the gold is, I think, in a mastermind, when people have a chance to add extra as people are sharing.
That's beautiful. So in terms of my high level mastermind, I do have criteria. So the high level one, that's the one that they have to apply. That's the inner circle for my listeners. They have to apply. And in that application process, I vet to make sure that, yes, they've made art sales in the past. So it's not somebody trying to get their first art sale in the group. Yes, they already have their marketing assets like a website. So, it's like that's kind of like the minimum criteria. In the pods that I have, we don't have that vetting. So we have a mixture of group. I call it the Montessori method in there. So do you know what the Montessori method is?
I was a Montessori child. Absolutely.
Would you like to explain it for the listeners?
So it's very much about actively participating and making, I seem to remember a lot of coloured blocks and crayons, but that might not be required for masterminding.
No, it's not. It's more like the nursery schools where instead of having, this is the twos room, this is the by twos, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, they put the 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, and 4-year-olds in the same room together. And the idea is the 4-year-olds benefit from having a leadership role for the 2-year-olds, and the 2-year-olds benefit from having the 4-year-olds as models for them. So that's what I call the Montessori method of my accountability pods, is there are going to be people in different levels, but the assumption is that they benefit. And also, just because somebody is ahead in some areas, they could be behind in others. So we have people who maybe they're just starting out in their art career, but somebody else who is further along may not be technical, may not understand the ins and outs of social media because they're used to more traditional things like gallery. So those two people can help each other, even though they are in different stages.
Yes, I think that's key. When I'm putting groups together, I make sure that everybody has 3 things they need from the group and can give 3 things, so that there's that even give and take. If you have 4 people, 5 people in a group, that's suddenly an enormous amount of connections. Probably not something you could do with your pods, but with your high level group, you can really weave it together. And it doesn't all have to be, this person needs to build a warehouse and this person is a distribution expert. It doesn't have to be that kind of stuff.
Right.
But it might be this person is going through a troubling problem in their personal life. This person has already been through it. Or maybe this person wants to move to Mexico and this person is a Spanish speaker. It can be all sorts of stuff. But the more of that you get, the groups that I have that stay together longest are as carefully curated as possible. That feeling of you're putting as much in as you're getting out is really important.
Okay. And then what about like having the cohort rather than an evergreen model? Can you talk about that? And I have my own opinions, but this is now more for listeners who may not have an opinion yet.
So I'm a big believer in cohorts. I like things to have a nice, clean start and end. So when people join my groups, we set a strategy. This is what we're going to do. So my groups tend to be a year long. And in that time, in January, the first thing we do is set up like a big strategy for the year. This is what we're going to achieve this year. That will build on. And next year, you'll get this. In theory, if all goes well, things never go quite to plan, as we know. And then we implement that through the mastermind. So it's nice and clear. So at the end of the year, then what we do is we reassess. How did it go? What went well? What went badly? Are you continuing? And we'll start it again. So that way it's got a nice clear arc. And people stay with me year after year after year because they see the results. Now, I know lots of people who have like a rolling enrollment. And for some masterminds, I think that could work. But certainly the high level ones, which are super fancy and get fabulous results, I think for me, that having rolling enrollment is tricky because you have someone who's brand new, who nobody knows, in the same group with people that have known each other for years. And I think that has a very different feeling. If at the beginning of the year you introduce a new person and you set up that community and you build it all beautifully, I think it can work. But if suddenly in August someone wobbles in, you're like, who is this? We've been pouring our hearts out over here. Who's Johnny come lately here? It can be very disruptive.
Yeah. I've been in masterminds where it was rolling. And when I first started my incubator, the first time I set it up, everybody started together. And then there was people, the next cohort, everyone started together. But then I changed it to rolling. And it was not good for anybody. It was not good for me because sometimes I would have a few people and sometimes I'd have a lot of people. And then it was always very sad. And then somebody was at their end. They'd be announcing, today's my last day. And that was always very awkward and weird. So now I only do it in cohorts. So everyone has that feeling they're coming in at the same time. There may be people who've been in it together before, but this is the cohort start date. This is the cohort end date. And then they can have that circle of trust and relationships build that are just so much stronger. And then there's no wah feeling if somebody leaves. It's like, no, because this is the end. It's like, this is the semester in school. Like this person graduated and now we can have the freshmen come in. So yeah, I agree with you on that. When we come back, I'm going to ask Liz about what else is important about masterminds. And she's going to talk about closing ceremonies for the end of the year. But I actually close out every mastermind session in the inner circle the same way. And that is asking them what their greatest wins were and what their greatest takeaways were. And so I'm going to share with you two of them today. One came from Chris, and the other came from Lynn. Listen in.
So the key takeaway is that, I was fearful of not making it. And then I kind of wrote down the action that you take is that you are not working on your art, but you're not selling your art. So then it creates that you're not making money from your art. So I need to activate the things I want to do, like the teaching and more paintings. And the goal of 3 hours, start my day with art.
Pick 5 big revenue making actions, big ones, and go for it. And you're going to hear some no's. But I'm scared out of my pants half the time what's going on and reaching out. But
of course you are. How human of you.
But hearing all our stories, it makes me realize we're all doing this together.
Yeah, that's really true.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Here's what I want you to know, that being afraid is very normal. It's very human. We all feel that way. The only problem is when you let fear stop you from pursuing your dreams. I talked to a lot of artists, and I actually did a survey for my most recent boot camp asking them what their biggest struggles were. And you know what they told me? It was a little different than what I thought. Their biggest struggle isn't how to price their art. I give a lot of information on the podcast and in my book on how to price things. Yeah, they're not really completely sure how to sell either. But really the biggest struggles that across the board, more than anything else, was how to get over their fear, how to be brave and bold enough to pursue their art without being worried about what their family would think, without worrying about what their coworkers think, without worrying about what potential buyers will think. They're afraid of not being good enough. They know that this is a mindset challenge that they need to unlearn, but they don't know how. They know that they're their own worst critic, but they don't know what to do. So yes, people tell me they struggle with consistency and marketing knowledge, but other than that, fear of putting themselves out there, fear of judgment, and lack of confidence in marketing their work were the most common concerns. So if that sounds like you, come join us inside the Artist Incubator. Not only are we going to give you exactly the right steps to take to build consistency in your art practice and understand how to market and sell your art, but we'll also help you get out of your own way. We'll let you know exactly where to start, especially if you're returning to art after a long break, or maybe if you're transitioning from another career. I know many of you want to make a living from your art, and achieving financial independence is 100% possible for you, whether you're looking to make $50,000 a year or $100,000 a year, or perhaps you're ready to grow beyond that. No matter what stage you're in, having a coach and having accountability and having the right support are key. So whether you're looking to just check out the Artist Incubator or perhaps the Inner Circle, head on over to schulmanart.com/BIZ. That's Schulman, SCHULMANART.com/ letter B as in boy, letter I as in ice cream, letter Z as in zebra. Okay, so now let's get back to the inspiration place and hear what else Liz has to say. Okay, so what have I not asked you that you think are very important to know about masterminds?
Well, just actually, before we move on, I'd love to go back to the closing of masterminds.
Beautiful.
So for years, I used to sort of just kind of close them. I didn't really make a big thing out of it. But these days, I've created a kind of process so that at the end of the session, the end of the mastermind, the end of the year, the 6 months, however long it is, we make a big kind of to-do about it. And one of the things we do is we go back over the things that everyone has achieved. Because us humans, we are really bad at remembering what we've achieved. What we actually mostly remember is what we haven't achieved. So if we've got 10 things on a list and we achieved 9 of them, we'll only think about the one we didn't get, which, whilst understandable, is not good when you leave something, because you'll think, oh, I didn't do that thing, as opposed to, look, I achieved 9 other things. So I make sure first that I squeeze people so that they don't have any regret about what they haven't achieved. I remind everyone of how much they have achieved. We go through, you did this, you did this, you did this. Everyone's very excited about that. And then, and this is the evil part of my life, I force people to be nice to each other. I make them sit in the hot seat, and for once they don't ask a question. They just sit there and absorb other people sharing what they have been fabulous about all year. And it's weird and it's squirmy because none of us are particularly good at hearing praise, but it is so beautiful because often the things that can change in others' life can be a little throwaway comment. Why don't you try this? Or some little moment where you feel that you've maybe been bouncing along in the bottom in life, but other people see you as, full of resilience. Or isn't that amazing? So I go through the whole group and force everyone to remember how much they've achieved and have the group like them. And it's just the sweetest part of my life. And at the end of the session, we're normally all in tears by this point. Oh, it's amazing. Everything is lovely. And since I've done this, let's get a little businessy here, as well as the fact that people leave on a high, my retention rates have vastly increased because people remember all the amazing things they've achieved for the last year. It's a beautiful thing.
How do you help them remember what they achieved for the whole year? Because I begin my mastermind sessions with asking people to share their wins for the week. And people have a tough time with that. And they usually like to start their wins with saying, well, I didn't do this and that. I was like, wait, stop. This is your wins section, not your what you didn't get done section.
Well, I start with, I take notes. I think about the things they achieve. So obviously I'm their coach. I'm in those sessions. And that really helps because the things I remember aren't necessarily the things they remember. And often you see people going, oh yeah, I did launch that thing. Oh yes, I did go to that event. Oh yeah, there was that biggest sale I've ever made in my life thing. Oh yes. So it doesn't take a huge amount of work. It normally, don't tell my clients, it normally takes 10 minutes before the mastermind starts. But with that little effectively post-it full of information per person, it's enough, because we are so good at forgetting what we achieved. It really doesn't take much to remember. And of course, the delight about being in a mastermind where you are in control, you are helping people shine, is I feel like my job is to sort of shine the spotlight on people. And that certainly means squeezing them so they remember their stuff. And to be honest, the things people forget are always the same stuff. Bigger sales, best number of clients, that amazing thing somebody said to you. People never remember that. All they remember is, oh yeah, I said I'd launch my website and I didn't. Yes, but you made all the graphics and you did the photographs and you've got it all together and it's like 30 seconds away from finished. Oh yeah, I suppose so.
You shared so much with us, Liz. I think you have some sort of course for people if they want to learn more about masterminds. Is that, did I get that right?
Yes, I do.
Okay, could you tell us a little bit about that and where to find it?
Sure. It's called Mastering Mastermind, and it is, oddly enough, a course on how to master mastermind. I've run it probably for about a decade, and you can get it as a recorded course where you can binge on it or get it weekly. But I'm just about to run a live version for the first time in a long time. So there'll be a wait list for that, which you can get on at rethinkcentral.com/mastering.
All right, to repeat that, because I didn't even get it, so I'm sure my listeners didn't. Repeat that whole URL again.
Sure. So rethinkcentral.com/
Rethink.
Central.
Rethink or rethink?
Rethink. Sorry, it's my English accent. I apologize.
How is that possible, by the way? Like you're Irish and you're okay. Rethink
Central.
rethinkcentral.com/mastering. Okay. And we will have this linked up for you in the show notes, which is episode 323. So either click down below where you're listening or head on over to schulmanart.com/323. Liz, do you have any last words for our listeners before we call this podcast complete?
Well, I genuinely think everyone can benefit from being in a mastermind. Some kind of peer review of what you're doing is so healthy. And I think particularly artists or running a business, we are sitting there on our own, second guessing ourselves all day, every day. And to have a group of people just say, yeah, you're doing all right, or what on earth are you thinking, is so helpful.
I love that. All right, my friend. Again, thank you so much for being with me here today. Thank you, Liz. All right, so we will see you same time, same place next week. Until then, stay inspired. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Inspiration Place podcast. Connect with us on Facebook at facebook.com/schulmanart, on Instagram @schulmanart, and of course on schulmanart.com.